Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today that is around Windows 10 migration. So we're joined here by Assam and Stephen from Lakeside who will be presenting the webinar for you today.
Hi, so thank you for joining this webinar around the simplify. How do you simplify Windows 10 migration? As Amy mentioned, I'll be presenting alongside our sales engineer Stephen Crasson. My name is Assam Akhtar. I'm the channel manager for Lakeside Software in the UK and Ireland. So here's a brief overview of the agenda. So we're going to discuss who is Lakeside, what do we do, what are the challenges regards to Windows 10 migrations that we help you with, then how do we do that, how do we actually simplify your migrations, what are the kind of outputs that you can expect from a Lakeside proposition, and some questions and next steps at the end. So Lakeside was founded in 1997. We've got about 4,000 international customers, millions of seats deployed globally. The area of the IT sector that we fall into is end user analytics or workspace analytics, and we are the recognized leader in this space. One of the key value points of Lakeside is that it's a completely cross-platform solution, so it works across physical desktops, Citrix, VMware, any kind of virtualization layer. So we've won awards with VMware for the most disruptive solution, and I think we've had 7 or 8 best in class or best in show for Citrix Synergy. We were the official Windows 10 launch partner for Microsoft, which is one of the reasons why we're going to be talking about Windows 10 today. So this is just a quotation from the general manager of Windows 10 and devices at Microsoft. She talks about how we provide essential telemetry for Windows 10 with the end user analytics platform. One of the key reasons why Windows 10 is so topical for Lakeside is that it's no longer a case where you're just having an operating system, installing it, supporting it for 3 or 4 years in your own data center and then doing an upgrade 3 or 4 years later. It is Windows as a service now, and that model opens up some additional challenges because yes, you're not having to effectively manage the OS anymore, but you still have to manage your applications, you still have to manage your users and your devices, and that's what we help you to do. So here's a quick overview of Lakeside. It's a predictive analytics platform for the workspace. It helps you to define the KPIs which illustrate the current end user service quality so you can deliver measurable improvements. No one else does this. It's kind of unique to Lakeside. Helps you to identify your end user personas and patterns. So this is basically how do your users consume IT today? What devices do they use? What applications do they have? How do they perform against each other? It's being able to make all these kinds of determinations by user group and geography within the organization. Ultimately, it empowers evidence-based decision making, so you can use your own data to support better decisions, either regards to procurement, asset management, or supporting an environment. For the purposes of today, we're going to focus on project acceleration, which is one of our use cases specifically for Windows 10. But just so you know, it's a solution which can do everything from the initial analysis and discovery of your environment all the way through to being integrated into your service desk and using it for troubleshooting, triage, and proactive support. So first off, why migrate to Windows 10? So in a Lakeside report that we did, we looked at Windows 10 compared to Windows 7, and the boot times are about 29% faster than Windows 7. The startup times of your Office applications are 70% faster compared to Windows 7, which is quite good. and the overall user experience score, and we measure user experience in a specific way, which is when the user is trying to do something on their device and the machine is queuing up for resources, we basically start a clock and we capture minutes of lost productivity across the enterprise. So on that basis, Windows 10 is about 5% better than Windows 7. And this was from a white paper called The Analysis of Windows 10 version versus Windows 7 Performance Implications. One of the interesting things is that you may or may not know this, but Microsoft recommends solid state drives for Windows 10. That was actually on the basis of this report that we did. So Microsoft took our report and based their global recommendations based on our data, which shows you how good the relationship is between us and Microsoft and why they see us as a key partner. So what are some of the challenges in terms of migrating to Windows 10 that Lakeside can help you with? So really, it's about helping you to answer questions which relate to your environment. So, looking at your estate today, which users, which locations, which departments, which segments of users or personas should we target first for the migration? What applications and website data do my users actually use and consume? How do my users consume IT services today? So, a lot of organizations have tool sets, but they're very much designed from an infrastructure perspective down. They're looking at it from a server perspective or potentially from an application perspective. But what Lakeside does is we look at it from the perspective of the user. So we're giving you a user-centric view of your end user computing estate, and we're showing you how your users are interacting with IT. You can gather immediate return of investment by identifying underutilized software and hardware assets, being able to sweat your assets further. So that's a huge thing for a lot of customers. Being able to repurpose software licenses, obviously that results in a cost saving, as well as being able to accelerate the project time and accuracy using our data to actually make better decisions in terms of sizing your new infrastructure. What do you need to have? So the phases of a Windows 10 migration project that we can assist you with are are key. So so ultimately, for the questions that matter, you need data, and Lakeside gives you the ability to make the right decisions faster and more accurately. So why Lakeside for your transformation project? So our viewpoint on this is that you need real-world evidence-based data to accelerate your project. If you don't have, if you're basing everything on the back of, say, synthetic testing solutions, you're not going to get a true picture of how users are consuming IT, and secondly, what is the real load on your environment. So we really do recommend that you have this approach of using your own data through your transformation. So the phases that we can help you with are discovery. So when we're talking about discovery, that's all the hardware and software assets that you have in your end user computing estate. That's understanding the baseline of the service quality that your users are currently receiving. And the reason why that's important is that you can track that user experience score all the way from your initial discovery of the project right through to the end state and business as usual. Okay, so when you're talking to your managers or your boss is talking to the CIO or to the board, you can demonstrably show how you've actually improved user experience from your Windows 7 to 10 migration. Risk assessment. So how do you de-risk your migration? Well, we help you to understand all the different risk factors that are in the environment, security-based issues, ensure that you right-size your environment and design and plan according to what you need rather than what you think you need, which is really key. and then ultimately into IT operations. So this is where you've got it in your working environment, and your IT support team, IT operations team is supporting the environment and using Lakeside to understand root cause analysis and to use our data to predictively trend user experience and make changes based upon what you're seeing that's impacting your users today. So I'm now going to pass over to my colleague, Stephen Crasson, and he's going to talk through some of the more specific things that we do at a more technical level.
Perfect. Thanks, Hassan. Hi, everyone. Sorry, Amy, if you could switch to the next slide for me, please. Perfect. So obviously wanted to talk around the migrations. So it can take a while. There are a lot of things, obviously, that need to be factored in. Obviously, SysTrack is going to shed an awful lot of light onto those things as well. So if we talk around just the discovery phase, all on its own, looking at what hardware is out there. So a lot of organizations that I've sort of worked with, there's a bit of a wild west out there really in terms of devices, knowing what hardware you've got and all the variants, the ages of all those devices. It can be a little bit of a mission, to be honest. So SysTrack is very good at scraping that all back and aggregating that data and presenting back to you what you've actually got out there in the first place, as well as the software that you've got as well, installed versus what is actually running, what is actually being used, what do I even need to consider bringing it across to my shiny new Windows 10 environment, and what do I even, some of it I don't even need to bother with because it's just not being used. Again, with the browsers as well and the websites that are being visited and any associated web apps, you can get a great deal of insight from the tool, as well as who your users are as well. The profiles they've got built up over the years and the amount of storage they're using and their boot and logon experiences, which applications are starting up for those users at that time as well. These are all things that can bring back to you, as well as the number of accounts that you've got out there. There are some softer security pieces to that as well, which we get onto in a little bit as well. And next slide, please. Thank you. So de-risking. There is a lot of risk going to Windows 10, especially with regards to your applications, the compatibility, the complexity of some of these applications in terms of the drivers that they use, and are they leveraging GPU at this stage in time as well. You'd be surprised how many applications will actually make use of a GPU, even if there's no apparent 3D within that application as well. Understanding how these applications will leverage the network, how much bandwidth they're using, the latency of some of these subnets that you might be operating in as well. Especially due to bandwidth contention, as more and more things move to the cloud, do you have the bandwidth to sustain those applications as well? And the users themselves, they tend to pose a lot of risk from what I've seen. Their behavior, the complexity of their needs as well, can go a long way in introducing risk into the environment as well. And hardware as well, especially with legacy devices, locally attached printers, even using LPT ports these days, and the drivers that go along with them. They're all things which might not work too well with Windows 10. I don't know if you guys can cast your minds back to a little while ago where, even sort of modern network adapters, Ethernet, gigabit ones, didn't have the drivers to actually support Windows 10 at the initial stage, and there are still a lot of legacy issues out there with devices which suffer from the same problem as well. And next slide, please. So the last one on the risk here as well, patching as well, because patching can have a large impact on the health of the estate. Are my devices up to date when we're doing this discovery? Are we getting data from machines which are actually up to date and running at their optimum? The number of accounts out there. Do we have admin accounts out there locally on devices which we don't need, which shouldn't be there, or perhaps they don't need admin in the first place? Again, with the applications, which users are making use of these applications? Is it creating risk and complexity? Are there applications out there, shadow IT, that you don't actually want, that shouldn't be there in the first place? SysTrack actually has a way of detecting new executables, actually which get introduced into your environment from one way or another, and then alerting you to its case as well. And antivirus and cloud storage, should they be using cloud storage? Should there be a Dropbox on there in the first place? Where is this data going? And why is it there? And is the antivirus up to the task of actually, keeping things in check as well? Next one, please. Pardon me. And in the design and planning stage, so you've got all this data, you've got all this analytics. How do we then start applying it to accelerate the project in the first place? How many images are we going to need? Whether you're going to physical, whether you're going to VDI, we can actually give you insight into how much time a user has actually spent looking at an application. So we talked around already what's installed and what's being used, but are they just using it for a small percentage of the time? Could you give someone the viewer of an application instead of actually giving them the full software package? Helping you rationalize all the assets you've got out there and the software, how many images you might need, how you can package these out and deploy them, and consolidate things down to as fewer images as possible in order to make your lives easier. The virtualization candidacy. So if you are going VDI, is VDI a good fit for everyone you've got out there? You can try and shoehorn everyone into VDI. Often you'll find people fit a lot better than others, I have to say, but we can actually give you the insight with the modeling tool for you to be able to say, what hypervisors are you planning on using? We can then give you in terms of how many users you're going to get onto each hypervisor, onto each host, telling you which users aren't a good fit and the reasons why, because maybe they're using a disproportionately high amount of CPU or a disproportionately high amount of memory, or they have mobility needs. And if you have mobile devices out there, are they actually being used as mobile devices? Visited a customer recently, had in the range of 1,000 laptops, but on over half of them, we never actually observed them changing subnet. And then being able to look at people's, unique requirements, their personas, effectively being able to pigeonhole people or characterize them as power users or knowledge users or task users, or whatever criteria you want to set. If you want some t-shirt sizing for your VDI, do I have 4 gigabyte ones, 6 gigabyte, 8 gigabyte? How do you want to segment things up? We have some default ones out of the box as defined by Gartner, but in practice and in theory, you could create your own based around what your needs are of the business and the business units that you have and the types of users that you have as well. Next slide, please. So once all this planning and design is taken place and you're starting to move over to this, you want to make sure that the project has been successful. We have a number of KPIs and metrics we can actually provide to users to actually understand, is my environment any better than what it was yesterday? And if not, why not? Or has this been a resounding success? And being able to benchmark that and understand that is absolutely key. If there are issues, SysTrack has some amazing root cause analysis. We have the ability to rewind the clock on devices and see exactly what was taking place on that device. And we take a snapshot every 15 seconds showing you the applications which are running, the resource that's being consumed, the connections that are taking place, various other counters around disk and network, all graphable within the software to be able to perform that root cause analysis against any device. Being able to see the impact of change is very, very important, not just in a BAU perspective. So if you take, for example, if a user is complaining about slow performance, actually being able to dial back the clock and have a look what changed the day before, which may have caused that to be slow. And also as well, keeping the environment healthy. Your users, your applications, your customers, they all change. That will have an impact on your environment over time. Keeping an eye on it, making sure it's nice and shiny, exactly how you want it to be. One which gets understated a lot in my experience is keeping the ISVs honest. You may be working with partners, outsourcing partners, who are telling you what a wonderful job they're doing at your service review meetings. Well, when in practice, you've got metrics to the contrary to actually say, well, actually, this isn't very good. Our boot times are escalating. Our applications are faulting. Being able to keep them honest and say, look, we now have these metrics. These are the benchmarks we want you to hit. This is what you need to be keeping on top of. Okay, being able to compare users between themselves. So if one user is having a good experience and the other one isn't, what are the differences there? And I think what's key is being able to compare yourselves to other businesses in your vertical as well. It's relatively new in conception at the moment, but we have something called SysTrack Community, which allows you to upload anonymized data about your performance into our cloud, and then being able to benchmark yourselves against other businesses in your area. What do other businesses in your vertical, what is their experience like with Windows 10, or the startup times of their applications or their boot times? Kind of answering the question, am I normal? Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? Being able to benchmark things for engineering perspectives. If you're creating your own in-house applications, or you're about to introduce a new application, how does it impact your estate? Is it going to kill things off? Is it using way more CPU than it used to, or creating faults? Being able to test and reiterate on those things before it goes live into an environment can go a long way in saving a lot of pain. Also, predictive analytics is what we're calling it at the moment. So being able to make business-based decisions now. So do we need to upgrade our SAN? Do we need more bandwidth? Here's the evidence to say whether or not we do or not. It's almost an instant business case in many, many respects. And next slide, please. Going back to the risk piece as well. So reason this is in here is obviously recently due to WannaCry and an outbreak the other day as well. Patching is increasingly difficult for a lot of organizations. You often have patches and patches for the patches, and then patches which supersede the previous patches. You're pushing them out as best you can, these patches, I'm sure, but are they getting through? SysTrack gives you another pair of eyes to actually tell you whether or not it's been successful. A lot of these patch delivery applications, they're very good at telling you that it's been pushed out, but not whether or not it's been successfully executed and installed and is present and actively running on that device. SysTrack can do that for you. Okay, and we have a number of dashboards. The recent one I've seen is particularly good. You're able to search by KB article and actually see, have we observed that patch being successfully deployed on that device? Next slide, please. Going back to the Windows 10 side as well, in terms of preparing for readiness, there are lots of tools we have out of the box to tell you how ready you are as well. So these are based on what we know about Windows 10 and what Microsoft know about Windows 10, telling you who's ready now, who has potential to be ready, and how many are completed at the moment, and which ones are, might have some issues that you need to know about. If we go to the next one, please. Now, if you do have issues, what are those reasons? So we saw previously that there was a segment of the pie chart, so there's some issues with these. This will tell you what those issues are. So you can see we're looking at, if you look at the key at the bottom, we're looking at the actual physical assets of that device, processor up to par, does it have enough memory, but we're also looking at the health. Health is very, very central to SysTrack. It tells you in no uncertain terms what is wrong with any device. And Assam's mentioned it already, telling you what is impacting the productivity of that device. Now, if you take a Windows 7 device and then move it to Windows 10 and you take all that baggage with you, the user's experience more often than not is going to get worse. We know obviously from the minimum requirements that Windows 10 needs a bit more resource than Windows 7. Now these performance issues, they can be tidied up beforehand, but if you don't, there is obviously a cost to that, and that's what we mean when we're talking about health. So when we're talking about performance concerns that you see there, that could be CPU contention, disk, memory, network, all kinds of things which can cause an impact and will possibly, I think more likely, get worse once you go to Windows 10 as well. But SysTrack will give you the insight. It will tell you what those performance concerns are, which devices, which users are affected by that. And last but not least, from my side, which users do we migrate first? So there are a few ways you can actually band this. There's obviously you can look at which users are easiest, which ones are hardest, what the quick wins are. We have some out-of-the-box settings there, but you can indeed set your own criteria. So the important thing from this is SysTrack can give you data. Now we have a lot of data, we have a lot of experience in applying this data and making it useful to customers. The more data we have, the better. So once SysTrack is deployed on an estate, it starts collecting data almost immediately, adding value to a Windows 10 migration and pretty much any other project which touches on a computer as well. there's lots of ways, lots of use cases. Customers are making use of this data to make intelligent and informed decisions about their projects, as well as accelerating them in the first place as well. And that's it from me. So back to you, Assam and Amy.
Thanks, Stephen. So we'll just talk through an example of how, how do customers use Lakeside once they've actually adopted the tool. So this is a global banking customer, been a Lakeside customer for over 5 years, over 100,000 seats in their environment. So it's a very large, complex environment spread across a number of geographies worldwide, physical and virtual infrastructure. So the first thing that we do is we're providing them a single pane view of the entire enterprise and the comparative health of the end user computing estate, regardless of whether it's physical, virtualized, anywhere else. Where does everybody look for their answers? So one of the key things that they do is they go, the CIO goes to the business and they use the user experience score as the objective measure of success. So every year or every quarter, when he's asking for budget, to gain IT investment, it's all based around, how is this going to impact the users? How is this going to improve the user experience? And that's great because we've got the objective data to be able to justify that business case inherent because they're using the tool on a daily basis. T-shirt sizing, so this comes up over and over again. It's amazing how many organizations do not have any real objective measures as to sizing their infrastructure and sizing what users need. It usually comes down to someone's opinion or maybe reading some articles about best practices, but what we see is a lot of customers save a hell of a lot of money by being able to look at their data, see exactly how they're consuming IT, and base their decisions on that, and that will ultimately mean that the project is much more likely to be successful, and you're not having to go back to the business cap in hand asking for more budget at the end of a project because it was sized correctly in the first place. Another key use case is engineering of applications and infrastructure. So being able to do side-by-side comparisons of the failure rates of applications, and then going back to product development internally or to your ISVs and saying we've got this data to show that your application continues to crash or fail in the environment. You've got some real data there. Another good use case is being able to benchmark the performance of applications. So imagine if the next time you're going to upgrade your antivirus product, you could actually benchmark how how Sophos versus Symantec versus McAfee actually performs and how it actually consumes the resources of the machines. That will ultimately have an impact on the longevity of the devices, but it will also have an impact on how the user experience is impacted. So it's a very useful use case. Software licensing reclaims. So looking at what's installed versus what's used, being able to get rid of being able to rationalize your applications, being able to cut the number of versions you've got down in your environment. That's going to make it leaner. It's going to make it easier to support. Hopefully you'll be migrating less applications over to your new environment than you need to. All of those things will ultimately have an impact on your project and provide you with additional sources of budget, which I'm sure everybody can do with. And then using Lakeside to proactively support the environment. So when people are, raising tickets internally, rather than asking them, what's your username, what's your IP address, trying to understand the nature of the issue, you can actually look at their systrack data and go back to any point in time up to 3 years in the past and look at exactly what was impacting the user, what applications were running, what resources were being consumed, what changes were happening in the environment, and having real answers. And this works regardless of whether the machine is online or offline. So if it's a laptop user, we capture the data locally on a localized database. If they're remote, and then when they go back into a location, the data just resyncs up. So you never have a gap in your visibility, and you're always able to understand exactly what was impacting the user, which is key. And then you can proactively use that information because we actually show you, your user experience is at 80%, and these are the top 5 things that are impacting user experience. And if you improve those things, that will take it to 85 or 90, which is key. So thanks for your attention. Really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us on the webinar. Just wanted to understand if you've got any questions. Please feel welcome to ask. If you could pop the questions into the chat questions box in the WebEx, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so we got the first question. So how long do we need to run the agent to start seeing some useful data? Usually what we recommend is that you have at least 30 days worth of data in the environment. So after the software has been pushed out and installed, after the agents have been rolled out, to have at least 30 days is usually good. Another question is, what infrastructure requirements are required to get this up and running in my environment? If it's less than...
Shall I take that one?
Yeah, go for it, Steve.
No, it sounds okay. It sounds like you answered that, but effectively, it depends on the amount of devices you've got. So we can give you some sizing information on there, but you can get quite a high density onto one server, typically between 8,000 and 10,000 devices, depending on the type of devices that they are, and it's a SQL backend as well.
Perfect. So another one for you, Steve. So what impact will the software have on my network and traffic and client and user machines?
Almost nothing. So the actual agent itself uses less than 1% of CPU during a steady state capture, about 40 to 50 meg of memory, depending on the device. This goes up a bit more with the terminal server, and it will store a local database on a typical client device, which is about 150 megabytes. After 3 years of data capture, network-wise, you're looking around about 150 kilobytes a day per device, so about the size of an email. Each device transmits its data, the summary information that you'll use to base your decisions on, well, I say once a day, and they do it at randomized times as well, so you won't get a network storm or anything like that.
Great, excellent. So another question is, we use ServiceNow. How does your tool integrate with it, or does it integrate with it?
Yeah, okay, yeah, so we integrate with ServiceNow. There are a few things you can use with this. So when a user creates a ticket, for example, via self-service, they can attach the telemetry of their device. They can say the machine they're on, and it will attach everything the service desk agent needs to actually find their problem. You can also get a bit smarter with it as well. So you can also enable it, in theory, whereby the technician, if he's being proactive, can actually create tickets and reach out and grab that data as well at the time. But I think the smartest of all is probably to be able to automate it. So if you see, if SysTrack observes certain conditions on the device, certain events caused by, for whatever reason, it can automatically generate a ticket into ServiceNow as well. And to be honest, this isn't just with ServiceNow. We actually built this technology so it can easily interface. It's an API. It will interface with anything you like, really. ServiceNow has it. There's a plugin already for it, but there's nothing to stop us interfacing it with your service desk software of choice.
Excellent. So another question, customers planning on doing a hardware upgrade to Windows 10, could you help them to identify which users need high-spec machines and who can get a lower spec machine?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do this all the time. And just a lot. One of the reasons as well is once you've identified the low users are and you give them a cheaper device, a perfectly capable device, you can actually then use that money to subsidize the higher end users if you want to. But yeah, it goes back to just right sizing in the first place. It's very easy to identify who the power users are and who are your task users, based on how much resource they use or the amount of applications that they're using as well. Sure.
Got a question which is from Alan. So he's asking, does the green status on what's our Windows 10 readiness just relate to hardware, or does it indicate that the installed apps are ready for Windows 10 as per Microsoft Ready for Windows 10 website?
So this is just the device on that particular slide that we showed. So it's looking at the hardware requirements specifically, and it's looking at the actual health of the device. You can go further than that if you want to. So we have ways of communicating, for example, with AppDNA to actually look at compatibility of particular applications and being able to feedback readiness that way as well.
Great stuff. So how does your toolset compare with the Microsoft Readiness toolset?
I suppose very favourably. So there's a lot more data. I haven't used the Readiness one myself, but the amount of data and information you're going to get from SysTrack is basically unparalleled. Not just during the assessment phase, but there and after as well. Being able to sort of consistently measure and benchmark your estate and use all the various other tools in it for root cause analysis, but it's not really apples for apples in that case. The Windows 10 one, it does answer a few questions for you, but it's depth, I suppose. One word, it doesn't have the depth or the breadth that SysTrack will have.
Yeah, and also to just add to that, our tool is fluent across physical, virtual, and all different types of environments. So, for example, if you've got a Citrix environment or VMware environment, we can see the specific communication channels like ICA and PCOIP. So you're going to get information which is a lot more relevant to you, as well as being able to work online, offline. And yeah, the amount of data is crazy. It's it's just something that you have to see to really get your head around.
Yeah, crazy but manageable.
Yeah.
So I think with everything, especially Windows 10 in particular, the devil's in the detail, and we have the data basically that you'll need.
So one question is, you mentioned that you look at the health monitoring. Can you just describe how does that actually work? When you talk about health, what do you mean? And we've got users who are currently complaining about slow machines on Windows 7. How can we guarantee that Windows 10 is going to perform better for us?
Okay, guarantee, that's a strong word. Okay.
Sure.
Well, firstly, let's talk about health. Yeah. Let's talk about health. So the health system is unique to SysTrack. It's basically a way, I mean, we touched on it a little bit already. We look at 13 different pillars of the user's health on that device. So we break it down to things like CPU, network, disk, memory, virtual machine if it's applicable, network latency. And we're basically looking at contention across these 13 categories. We're looking how long the contention is lasting and also how severe it is, and we use that to calculate the productivity impact against the user. We're taking these measurements every 15 seconds as well, and in some of the categories there's more than one counter. For example, with disk we're looking at 6 different things every 15 seconds, and what you're able to then see is that per device, why is it running slow? It's because 2 hours, you may be having 2 hours per week on average of CPU contention, 7 hours of disk, 2 hours of network. You'll see per device, and you'll be able to take this data to the bank. These are the reasons affecting this device and causing productivity impact to the user, which is quite novel for some businesses because there's a lot of guesswork in trying to figure out what's slowing it down, but because SysTrack is watching all the time, it can actually give it to you on a plate and say, this is why this user is going slow. And it's not just anecdotal. You can then drill down into that. You can see the times of day, you can see the applications, you can see the faults, the blue screens, whatever it might be. We'll tell you why we think that and where the evidence is to support that as well.
Yep, great. Another question, so would it be possible to share with the attendees the Windows 10 report carried out as mentioned earlier in the call? So yep, I can answer that one. So yes, we'll be able to share. Just contact your account manager. I'll just move the slide on for 1 second. So in terms of resources available, we've got the Windows 10 versus Windows 7 performance implications, impact assessment of Windows 10 and Office 365 for the enterprise desktop, and an upgrading Windows 10 transformation test with Lakeside. If you speak to your account manager, if you wanted to have a conference call with us, or maybe have a demo, or actually, you've got a real project and you want to discuss, how can you go about getting a license to actually look at Lakeside, please contact your account manager or the virtual team at Bytes, and we're obviously, and complete the feedback form with your desired next step. So would you like a call? Would you like a demo? Would you like to actually test the software and see for yourself with your own data? Generally, that's the best way, of actually seeing exactly, what the power of Lakeside is and how it's going to help you to make those decisions that count. So if there aren't any more questions, I think we'll call it a day at that. Really, really appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for the excellent questions from everyone and your engagement. And yeah, hopefully we'll speak to you guys soon.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.